Velocity New York, what do you think, right?
I think that was even more energetic than the morning.
Jane, can you please get a picture of me doing this? Because my daughters will think I'm cool.
Raise your hand if you learned something today. Rockin'.
Oh my gosh, I was
All
just,
right, you didn't raise your hand. What the hell?
I was just in Will Law's video talk, and it was, very educational. It was a great talk. He wove in, he was showing live code and kept going from deck to code to browser, and the exact type of talk we'd love to see at Velocity. Awesome.
How did your session end out?
It was Andrew Schaefer. Have you ever seen Andrew Schaefer speak?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever taken acid?
I plead the fifth.
There's really not that much difference. Yeah.
You're being videotaped.
It was awesome.
Just to remind you, Courtney.
How should we do this? We have questions, and we want you all to ask questions as well. And there are mics.
My soda.
I already tried to drink my microphone.
Yeah, so we were talking coming into this. We definitely have things that we care about. And some of them are nitty gritty. More of them, I think, are higher level. And so I think that would be a good place to start, is maybe we put out things that we've been thinking about and try to get feedback from folks in the audience. So please, if we say stuff and no one walks up to the mics, this is gonna be lame. So please, get ready to get up out of your seat and come to the mics. So I think all of us have a couple. Who wants to go first?
You.
Okay. Question. I think that the progress and success and adoption of these DevOps best practices has more to do with people than technology. Discuss.
That was a directive, not a question.
Discuss now.
Isn't it true that, my opinion?
We have somebody.
The mic's not on. Can we get the mic on?
Hello.
And please tell us your name when you.
My name is Chris Mack, Boston, and I was just going to comment on that. Yes, of course, yeah, people, and that I'd like to see the culture conference on a day that you can attend that and Velocity in New York.
Oh, are you talking about Cultivate?
Cultivate, yeah.
Oh, yes. To not have it overlap with Velocity. This is a very reasonable thing. And it's not the first time that somebody said that today. Yes, good idea.
Anyone else on people and DevOps?
So I was thinking more along the lines of the adoption. For me, I've been doing this for 10 years now. Well, I haven't been speaking for 10 years. I've been speaking for maybe 6 or 7 years about this. And I thought by now I'd be done, right? And instead it's maybe 1% of websites are where they should be. How is that possible? All of the techniques and tools, not all, but we have a lot of techniques and tools out there. And I just feel like making inroads is so hard. And some people say, well, if the tools were easier or if the techniques were easier to understand. And it's yeah, we could definitely improve the tooling and the techniques, but I don't think that's the issue. I think if people cared about it, that we have enough there now that we could see better performance is the main thing I'm thinking about. And that's not happening. I think it has more to do with getting people to care about it. How do we do that? Come to the mic, please.
There's mics in the aisles that you need to walk up to.
Crowd surf. Go.
In the middle aisles.
I think it's beyond getting people to care. You have to prove to people who are paying us that there's a real business metric towards performance, right? Performance has to be directly correlated to improving the bottom line. Until that's done, no matter how much we care about it, no matter how much we try to show the trend of what we've been doing in order to make the sites better, I don't think that correlation will really matter to the organization because the business leaders are not going to get it. There has to be a real bottom line benefit and directly provable to performance that gets our business leaders to understand that it's to the benefit of everyone in the organization. So I think you need a KPI. So we need to come up with that metric.
Those data exist, right?
Yeah, we have case studies like that. There was another really great talk was Jay and Norbert from Intuit talked about their success stories with performance. I don't know if you guys are Jay and Norbert, if you're here, stand up or raise your hand. And they said that they were trying to sell performance internally, and they cited these case studies, Google and Shopzilla and Bing, and deaf ears. And then one of their developers just on the side said, frick it, I'm just going to make some performance optimizations to the site. And when he did that, he tracked conversions or something like that, and it went up. And all of a sudden, the decision makers said, oh, okay, let's do that. And so one of their points, they had a lot of great points, was these case studies exist, and they're awesome and stuff, but sometimes it's hard for the decision makers to internalize or personalize these case studies from a Netflix or a Twitter or a Google. And Intuit is a pretty big company, but maybe even there, it didn't seem to be us.
I actually want to add to that topic. We talked about selling, right? And for quite a lot of years already, we created the white papers, and we invented RUM to start with, right? To try to correlate with business metrics and so on. But today I saw this, like one of the keynotes was about visualizing the metrics, right? And all of us in the audience loved it, right? Because graphs were exactly what we geeks understand. But I don't think business people that need to approve it actually look at graphs or look at data the same way we do. And from what I probably mentioned it to Steve early on, that some of the responsive design concept related to our business much better because the phones are much more small and physical in their hand, right? So it kind of gave me insight that maybe we need to create those mind tricks or something that explains to people on the other side of the business, right? People that are not technically educated, not in technology, but in whatever our other side of business is, right? And in my case, it's marketing maybe, but for some others, it's, I don't know, business or e-commerce and whatever. Maybe we need to speak their language and create those tricks in their language and explanations in their language.
I want to make a comment. I know you've got something to say. A couple things. One is I don't think we can have enough case studies. So we should always be doing this.
I totally agree with that. Like we were looking at proposals, and I was like this Intuit proposal, again, an awesome talk. And when we were reviewing proposals, I was like, we've had a lot of case studies. How many case studies and after listening to that talk, I'm like, every year we need case studies. Right.
Because while the Shopzilla and the Bing and Google case study gets trotted out a recent amount, it was still 2009. The other thing is, I think underlying this is that engineering is not something that sits in isolation, no matter what kind of engineering you do. Engineering includes marketing. If you have a brilliant idea, but you suck at telling people about it, then you didn't have a brilliant idea. And so you can't just state a fact, set it over here, and say, "See, you do have to sell it. This is the large challenge." And I'll argue. Where did Sergey go? No, he like disappeared. Oh, there you are. Wow.
I
Do you
wanted
have
to-
teleportation?
He turned into Andrew.
You turned into Andrew Schaefer. That's so weird. I will say that there is actually business people. Actually, I would say that they're quite fond of graphs. My friends at Nasdaq would say that they're quite fond of graphs. If the axis has the dollar sign on it,
Yeah, the right vocabulary.
then I would say a picture is worth $1,000 words.
I want to comment on the vocabulary thing, though, because when we all look at these and you look at something to you inherently like 300 milliseconds makes a lot more sense probably to us than to somebody in the business. Like 300 milliseconds, they're like, that's nothing. And how does that matter? So that's actually a really good point, because I think some of us can look at that or watching that web page test stuff this morning was sort of jaw-dropping, but that may not be enough to convince someone in that role.
So before I try to answer your question, I want to say thank you. And you guys are just icons and creating a movement that is significantly changing the world. So thank you. At the same time, I don't think you're viewing the problem correctly.
Bring it.
Go on.
The problem isn't that they are adhering. The problem is that we haven't repeated it enough in as many different varieties, in as many different locations, in as many different ways, because every person has a different listening ear. And it is up to not only to you, but to me, to us, to speak, to write as many times, present as many places as we can possibly do it, to create the multiplicative effect that will do it in, honestly, it's more like a 10-year, if not a 20-year type of change. For things that are radically more self-evident than DevOps, it took much longer. It took Nelson Mandela 27 years of sitting in jail under much worse conditions than any of us will ever see to convince a people that apartheid was wrong. That it takes patient repetition without making the other side wrong, and the amount of times that the repetition is unguessable. It is, you only know when you've reached the point where public consciousness tips over. And the amount of people that you're trying to do is worldwide, because it's not just IT, it is business, it is marketing, it is sales, it is everybody. To make them understand is, you can't actually make them understand, you can only consistently reveal what is apparent. And it is your job to repeat.
Word.
I totally agree, yeah.
This should be good.
Based on the way you set this up, the obvious thing that's happening is people are building it wrong faster than people are getting your message. And I would actually sort of change the way he wants to approach things, and that's that I don't actually care if everyone's website's fast. If you think it's such a disadvantage to one of these businesses and you understand their business, why don't you crush them? I mean, that might be
I knew this was coming. I just knew it.
I mean, that might be a privileged position for me to take, and I'll accept any criticism or critique on that. But if these are such big deals, if it's such an advantage, build a business and crush them.
Darwinism wins.
On some time scale,
I agree with that.
how fast can you do it?
I think the hard thing is, although performance or scalability or availability is important, and to us it might be like the most important thing, in where people spend their money, that might not be the ultimate thing. And so just having a faster website might not be enough to displace someone who's like the market leader for 10 years. But to that point, one thing I do try to do is, especially in areas where I think performance is lacking, when I find a startup that is doing technology right, I really try to promote that. And a great example is Trigit.
So you're actually answering your own question, because what you're saying is it's not actually that important. If it was that important, they would have fixed it already, right? If it was that big a deal to the business bottom line, to what their advantages are in the market, they'd already be fixed.
And okay,
You asked.
I'm on videotape, so I
You
can't
asked.
tell you the actual anecdote that I would want to tell you. But sometimes someone can be a market leader, and again, like you can't displace them on the competitive differential of performance.
Which means that they're improving their own performance doesn't actually change their bottom line that much. Right? So
Yeah.
rational agents maximizing utility functions. Nash equilibriums.
I knew Nash equilibrium was going to come in. It always does.
Well, before you answer, are there any other mathematicians behind the microphone right now?
No more.
Okay, I don't know. Andy?
Yeah, we've got a complexity problem in that, the number of devices and the way people are accessing the web is exploding. And, how does a developer cope with that? Is that part of our problem? Not just the business case, but there's a whole huge amount of technical people out there who just don't know.
I would. That's a really good question, and I don't have any answer. But I do want to submit a patch in that complexity in that scenario. And you made one case, which is the diversity of devices. I'd say that complexity is a thing. However, it might not be a problem. Might also be just a property that could be an advantage. The number of devices means that your site, well, maybe crappily, may be displayed on an ever-increasing surface area. So at the same time, it's a pain in the ass to keep up with. I'll give you that. It's also a huge advantage because these are screens that don't just sit on a lap or a desk anymore. So I would say that our ability to keep up with them is certainly a challenge, but their multiplication could be opportunities. So I didn't answer your question, but it talked a lot.
No, but I kind of wanted to speak to that because something that struck me a lot sitting in the mobile track today was we talk a lot about the challenges of mobile, right? And there's certainly a lot of teeth gnashing about the network and those kinds of things and things that we may or may not have so much control over. But what was really surprising to me, when O'Reilly got called to the carpet by Ilya on our own website for things that we should already know. It's ridiculous. So there is a point where I feel like people have sort of thrown their hands up about mobile and just thrown oh, screw it, tons of devices, we can't control the network, we have no control over the carriers. And it's like all the rules went out the window. And now we're worried about complexity. Tackle the things you know how to do before you even start worrying about complexity. And so I was very surprised by that. That seems to me to be a thing, that mobile is way behind on stuff we already know. And that shouldn't be an issue. Everybody should have gone, okay, mobile web, well, here's all the stuff we know about the web, next. And that has not happened. So that's a question I didn't really pose as a question, but.
I've definitely seen that a lot, where it seems like even people in the same company who did a really good job on their desktop website with performance, it's like they forgot everything when they did the mobile version. And it's like, well, yeah, a lot of that stuff still applies. Most of it does.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I think it's really awesome that at the Velocity Conference we spend a decent amount of time talking about cultural issues, but we do also talk about execution, and I think part of getting people to care about it, I think, is probably just a matter of starting at the grassroots level, giving them the tools to execute in the direction of the best practices. And this is, to some degree, aren't we just dealing with the same thing that Linux dealt with getting into the data center, right? It's really about the people who end up taking the initiative to execute and put something in the environment in Skunkworks. Same thing we saw with the talk about performance. Somebody took the initiative on their own. They made some improvements to pages. They saw conversions go up. All of a sudden, people get it. I think it's a really uphill battle to try and get the ideas to be inserted at the top and then trickled down. I think organizational change in technology-driven organizations has a tendency to build consensus at the bottom and work its way up. So I think Velocity, and I think all you guys are doing a fantastic job of covering both bases. So thanks again for that.
I agree with that, and I love the grassroots bottom-up part of that. But I also know that I've been at a lot of different companies, and the last 2 companies I've been at have been started by engineers, Jerry and Philo and Larry and Sergey. And I'll tell you, being at a company started by engineers, and those engineers cared about performance, thankfully for me, really changes, I think, affects how everyone in the company focuses on that. So I think you have to be a little adaptive here. Like, I think if you can get buy-in at the higher levels in the company, the executive levels, I think you should try to do that. If that doesn't work, and I think even if you can do that, it's not one or the other. Like, even if you can do that, having some VPs or CEOs tell the actual developers what they have to do and focus on isn't really successful either. And so you kind of want to have both. So I would encourage people, like I did a conference in Amsterdam last week, and when I flew in, the first thing, I went straight from the airport to KLM headquarters and did a talk to some of their execs about the importance of performance. And so I think, it's good to do it, to try to drive that from both directions.
To go back to complexity real quick, I think one of the issues is that I've seen here is the idea of best practices, because we've heard from Google, Facebook, Netflix, but everybody had different ideas and different methods, which is great, but it's really hard to prove that to people. You're saying we have all these use cases and everything, different people, different tools, different setups, and it's going to be real hard to convince people. And again, while the complexity is good for us to be able to choose what works best for us, it makes it that much harder to prove to people what in the hell is actually the best. And so that's my...
I would argue, though, I think that at the level of talking about why hasn't performance gotten to where we think about, there are some, you wrote some rules, Steve, didn't you write some rules? Some pretty basic ones. So I think there is a level there of like, it doesn't matter what, your organization's like or what your stack's like, cache your stuff, put your JavaScript at the bottom. Like, those are the kinds of things that I think there are some best practices around, so there's a mix.
Another way, and I just thought of this, so it's probably not very smart. If you have a conversation, if I have, and let's make it super simplistic, right? I've got this opportunity to work on this new feature, or I have this opportunity to make the existing feature fast. If the answer you get is, we have to work on the new feature, and why is that? Well, it's because the new feature is going to get us more sales, or it's going to get us more revenue. Is that okay? So implicitly, does that mean that when I'm done with this feature, is it okay for me to slow down the rest of the site? And if the answer is no, then why? So if it's okay, if it's not worth speeding up the site, then tell me what the cost is of slowing it down. If you're okay with the performance, do you see what I'm saying? And at which point, it's like the sort of the perennial capacity planning. And when my team comes up with, okay, well, how many servers are we going to need? And they'll say, well, insert some Excel or some R, some forecasting, blah blah blah. Bing, we're going to need 25 servers. To which I always ask, why not 24? Why not 100? And if you have answers to those questions, rock on. But if you don't have answers to those questions, what you're doing is you're implicitly saying it is actually subjective and you don't know. So, restated, are you willing to be blissfully unaware of what could make you more money? That might be another way of saying it. I probably shouldn't talk to your bosses.
So what I heard was the next time you're asked to add a new feature, do it in a way that really slows down the website. Is that what you said?
Ask if it's okay to slow down the website.
Maybe
right?
do that after you slow it down.
Either way.
Okay.
I think we'll go over
You
here.
wanna
I
go?
don't know who was here first, actually. I can't keep track. Sorry.
Okay, go. So you talked about spreading DevOps beyond the 7 years that you've been talking about in Hawaii. You haven't made more progress. To what extent is your message focused on the KLMs of the world versus the Googles of the world or the small startups? Because it seems to me the way we're positioning it is this is really a great tool for the beleaguered CIO who's getting pushed aside and the developers are siding with the business and going directly to the cloud. This is a way for them to become more relevant in traditional business. Is that a lot of what you've been talking about? Have you been talking more to the Fords and the KLMs or more to the smaller companies?
All of the above. So my thing I really have been enjoying doing lately is talking through VCs to their portfolio companies. So for Excel, First Round Capital, Google Ventures, a Hawaiian one, Blue Startups. I'm trying to get them to fly me out. I've done workshops with their portfolio companies. And so, like we ended the workshop, an hour later I got an email from the portfolio company that said, I reviewed them as part of the workshop. They said, yeah, we did about half the things that you suggested, and we took our site from 7 seconds to 2 seconds, right, in 1 hour, right? So, and it's a lot of this easy stuff, the gzip and things like that. I try to, I actually thought, so I think I talked to, all the different kinds of companies, and I think it works for all different kinds of companies. I actually think it's easier for smaller companies to change stuff than it is for bigger companies just because of legacy and, administrative bureaucratic hassles. Where I thought you were actually going to go was enterprise. And I don't know if you guys have gotten any feedback to that. That's certainly something that we've talked about a lot internally is I think we would all agree enterprise is underrepresented in the Velocity audience. And I think that especially here on the East Coast, maybe there's more awareness and need for that. So I do talk to all kinds of companies, but to be honest, not many enterprise companies. There are all types of web companies, but not so much enterprise.
One of the things I think might be helpful, did you happen to see Andrew Schaefer's talk just earlier?
I just flew in now. I just did this last session.
Oh, you just came for this session? This experimental, like, weird thing that we're doing? Okay, well, luckily for you, it's on videotape. And so you should go watch it.
And the other awesome thing is this is actually the best session of the whole conference.
Yeah.
Trust me.
I wasn't this funny earlier. Andrew talked a lot about organizational learning, and that's, I think, a really large piece. Put aside DevOps, put aside Agile, put aside any other sort of best practices and methodology and all of those things. As Andrew said, those are just words. They are a means to an end. And whether you are KLM or whether you are Kraft or whether you are GM, you're still interested in moving your business forward. And the way that you do that is being explicit in learning about your own organization and how it works and whatever sort of external factors that you've got going, right? I hate that I'm going to do this. I'm going to point to Toyota as sort of, it's unfortunate because they weren't the only ones looking at learning from the work that they were doing on a daily basis. But they are an example of organizations. Now, DevOps is really just one part, right? I think Theo Schlossnagle said it, I think, 2 years ago now. It's really star ops, right? It is design, it is finance, it is legal, it is HR. And a lot of the stuff that you hear from Andrew's talk today, from Richard Cook's talk from Tuesday, is equally applicable. Contexts are going to be different, and age of organizations and the dynamics at play that may stand in the way of organizational learning may be different, but the goals are still the same. So. So yes, I think it should be applicable.
And Andrew has another thing that he's been saying lately, which is, if you're not building a software business, you're losing to someone who is. And I think that the core of that is not, if you're not using technology in such a way, you're going to lose, but if you don't have the mentality of how your organization should work that software organizations tend to have, or at least that's a piece of it, then you're missing out. And so the big change is very much about the people and the structure and whether that does or doesn't allow them to learn and to develop new ways of doing things.
Andrew, your patch to if you're not building a software business, then you will lose to somebody who is. What was your patch again?
Oh, was there a patch to that? I couldn't be there. I was in here. Okay, so we've moved on.
If you're not building a learning organization, then
I already
Then
extrapolated
you're
what you meant
losing.
from the first one to that one, though, so I was ahead of you. So I have a question then. Okay. Sweet. Good. So, well, I have kind of a question from the culture track yesterday that's sort of related to this. You can either come up and talk about this, or maybe it's a show of hands things, but how many people are in engineering roles and think that you can still do your job and not care about how people work? Honestly. Like, no hands went up? No one? So there's nobody here who thinks they can just hide in a corner and write code, and that's okay?
I think you have to phrase the question a little differently.
Okay.
How many people here work closely with HR at your company?
Okay, that's a way better question. Thanks, Steve.
Hi. So we've seen kind of a shift from software and interconnectivity from way back in the days of CompuServe and AOL dial-up, where you had a single-purpose client connecting over communication protocols, to the advent of the World Wide Web and browsing. Now we're getting back into that phase of fat client or mobile client, where the internet is becoming simply a communication protocol for these services to exist. Are we seeing a decline in the World Wide Web and the browser-based experience?
In what way do you see, I thought maybe, so in what way do you mean, are you saying mobile devices are fat clients?
They are, yeah, many are.
And what's an example of how that's true?
So there's many services, take Glide, for instance, which is a video text messaging application which has no website or web presence. It's purely mobile, mobile to mobile. And it's all using the internet. So it's still over the World Wide Web, but there's no website. So are we seeing kind of a shift where companies are now starting to focus on delivery over the web as kind of a mechanism, as opposed to still building HTML, CSS, and JavaScript websites?
I'd just say that the presentation layer is changing. I don't think that there's anything much more than that. I think that there's a lot of advantages to a mobile device. There's a lot of disadvantages to a mobile device. They are not the same as a desktop and a desktop browser. But in the end, before there were browsers, there was Gopher. So yeah, I think that the presentation layer is the place that is changing. It's unlikely. I don't for this foreseeable future. I still think that it's a truism that there's communication protocols over the internet delivering to some device.
Yeah, and does it matter?
I don't know. Somebody looking for a job is going to focus their efforts into a field that's going to be desirable.
Fair game.
Right.
Today's Objective-C is yesterday's Perl.
Do you have any more of those stored up? You've been writing them all day? No?
There's still programming languages, right? This is just computers and software, and there's a language, there's a way. Deployment is a little different, but deployment from the days of AOL was very different. You deployed to a CD, which then was mailed to everyone's doorstep, and so and now you put it in the hands of an app store, and yeah. I don't think that it's so I think it's different. I don't think it's so radically different to call, say, paradigm shift on it.
Ilya.
So I actually want to go back a little bit to one of the earlier comments around we could do so much more in terms of educating people, doing more talks, getting on stage around the world. And I think there's no better testament than this conference, right? Like, kudos to you guys for organizing this event, the first one in New York. There's a great turnout, lots of great talks, great conversations. And, I'd love to see it spread more widely. So
I'll pay you later, Ilya.
you'll tell me later. All right, so I have an idea or maybe a suggestion. So I also see a lot of demand from developers, right? I've had the opportunity to present a lot of conferences. I do see the conversation changing. People are asking more performance-oriented questions. I'd love to see Velocity be more proactive about that. I'd love to see the content go out wider. For instance, I'd love to see the videos be available online and free, because I think there's so much knowledge packed into these conferences. I've attended like 3 talks. There's another 30 that I missed, and I want to watch them. And I'd love for the rest of the world to be able to see that, because I think we'll just grow that pool. It'll pick up the conference as well. So can we make those videos online and free?
Duly noted.
I think one thing about, for example, taking Velocity beyond California, where we started, is there's a money side to that equation, right? And it costs money to, for a lot of this. So I think that's, there are some things that, are taken in consideration into that business proposition. I think one thing that's really awesome, I don't know, I think maybe we only mentioned this to speakers, maybe not to the audience, is that speakers have access to their videos and can post them if they want. So, for example, you could post yours and Philip could post his.
All the speakers in the room, please post your videos. Thank you.
And I'll mention that this specific topic, videos, is something that has progressed over time. So when we did the first Velocity, I think we only videotaped the keynotes. The second Velocity, we videotaped the keynotes in one of the afternoon rooms. And now today we have it where I think we videotape the keynotes and all 3 of the jury tracks. I don't know about the sponsor track. And then, 2 years ago, all of the videos were behind the paywall, and now, any speaker's video that they post is not. So, this, I don't know what it's going to be going forward, and it is something that could change. And I think this is a great piece of feedback to get. Although maybe it's just me. I personally don't like watching videos, and I especially don't like it when I have a queue of 10 or 20 videos that I need to watch. And so I think that would really help. What I thought you were going to say, and what I'd really like to see, is more Velocities. I think the human interaction part of it is really important.
And we don't record the hallway track, which is really too bad. Well, maybe the NSA does.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to be up here again.
You're back.
I think that you and Andrew and Ilya actually just danced around a new way to talk about it. And that we tend to fool ourselves, especially in IT, that the only thing that motivates the business is money and economics. And that just ain't true. And that's also, that's not why. The why is actually for the human condition. It's for the guys who are doing 60-hour weeks, wearing pagers on their belts. That's why. It's to bring information faster so that the human condition of our users and our customers can be better, because we want to improve their lives. We want to improve the lives of the employee, the lives of the customers, the lives of the users, and the lives of the company. And it makes money. And it makes you less viable to competitive threats. It's all 3. Speak to the big 3 motivators: love, fear, money.
Thank you.
+1.
Sergey's back too.
Yeah, I'm back. In addition to
videos that we are talking about, I think education is not only bringing what we have now to the wider audience. I think we can look at education in a, kind of in the areas where it's not only early adopters like all of us. Well, it's maybe not that early adopters anymore, but still, I have a feeling that we are not looking at more traditional ways to educate about performance in particular. At least I don't see much concentration on college education and, well, maybe some hackathons are happening, yes, but not beyond that. What do you think is needed for us to go and start traditional education, colleges to care about it, not just core computer science that is, I think, a little bit antiquated in that way? Bring a little bit more craft to our science.
I don't know. I'm not sure I could answer the question of like how you fix our educational system. I can't believe I'm going to quote Andrew again. Why does this keep happening?
Because he's good.
We've been talking about this about companies. I even think of Velocity this way a little bit, about companies being graduate schools for our field. And while in my heart of hearts I like to believe that there are ways that we will be able to fix the educational system, I think that it is on companies as well to be better at how you bring people on board, how you're training them, how you're sharing that information, how you're being a learning organization. I think that while there's this intractable problem of solving, you can't just say, well, that sucks and what we're getting doesn't work, so, right? So I think that, you know, tech companies have the ability to work on this within their own organizations.
Okay, I think we've got time for one or two more comments.
Hi, Igor Mushnik, Constant Contact. I actually have a suggestion here. We're all talking about DevOps, it's all inclusive culture, developers and ops, but is it me or maybe, it's actually interesting to see the statistics, how many developers here, but I have a feeling that it's overwhelming presence of ops. So I'm coming to DevOps from 25 years being developer, running startups and actually breaking my neck many, many times. So I learned my lesson, but I would like to see better, maybe like more inclusive developer presence here, and maybe like theme that make developers like to come here and actually create this like better merge and cross-pollination of the ideas. What do you think?
Agreed. I will say, though, you might be surprised. How many people here have written public-facing code in their organizations? So I would say, raise your hand if you know the CAP theorem. All right. So I would be surprised, actually. So titles or possibly domain expertise may be a lot more mixed than you think. I'd say that a lot of Steve's track, all of the tracks are going to include developers. It is different, however. I will tell you that the Velocity crowd is very different than, say, the crowd at QCon or at GoTo, and I think there's a reason for that. Having said that, those conferences and OSCON have DevOps tracks and have ops tracks. So yes, there should always be more, and but more. And I think what Steve has said in a couple of times this past week, it sure would be awesome if designers came to Velocity. So yes, the more the merrier.
More developer theme maybe can excite a little bit more.
If you can describe what a developer theme is, then we can.
Like hardcore performance server development.
Sure. Yes.
So
Yeah.
I understand that there's like a web theme, which is great, but maybe let's get a little bit down the stack.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Sure.
And O'Reilly, you have like a whole range of representative and speakers that you
I look
can
forward to
excite.
seeing your proposal.
I will.
Like we say, patch is welcome.
We have
And just
time
to
for one
be
more?
clear, this wasn't like a hypothetical like proposal to change the Velocity conference. He's talking about the call for proposals. So like if you have server programming ideas about improving server performance or anyone else, then the CFPs for the upcoming next year's conferences are open soon.
So we have time for one more. Aveline.
One last one. I'll make it quick. Just going back to the comment about how do we improve education and how do we get more, a wider array of topics taught to people outside just core computer science. And I've had some personal success just going up to local school districts and saying, hey, I want to come into your AP computer science classes. I want to talk to kids who are interested on working with computers, and I just want to tell them about operations. I have never had one school or one school district say no. Every single teacher out there says, we need people to come in and just talk about this. Tell people that this is, there are real careers around this. There's a lot more than just sitting at a desk and just writing out code and that being the only thing you do, because right now that's all that they can tell people. So I would say it is a lot of work, but find a school, find something local. If you're in a small town, a big town, it doesn't matter. Just go somewhere, just say, hey, I want to talk to your kids. Just give me 1 hour. I don't have to come back if you don't want me to, but if you like, I will. Just let me talk, let me tell them what's going on, tell them that there are all these opportunities, that there are legitimate careers in this stuff, and how to get there. And, this is one of the things that we're doing with Ops School, and if anyone wants to know more, come talk to us about it. Little plug there, sorry. But this can happen, and we can make a difference. And it's, I've seen that, individuals can really make a big difference here. So I encourage everyone to do that.
That's a nice message to end on. Thanks, Aveline.
All right, so I think the next thing we need to do is go to the Bridges Bar for the reception sponsored by SOSTA. Who is the? SOSTA, yeah. And that's going to be downstairs. Just go down that escalator, and we'll all be there, and you'll all be there, and let's talk some more.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for
See
coming
you
to
next
Velocity.
year.